Hello friends, I hope everybody's doing well. It's getting nippier and nippier in Johannesburg by the day. It looks like we're in for a bit of, for a bit of a cold winter this year. Nevertheless, I hope everybody's doing well from wherever you're watching. About a year ago, I shared a video on the subject of AFROPHOBIA, shared some thoughts about how I see, the entire phenomenon, particularly as it relates to what has been happening in South Africa, really for several years now. And I think in different seasons it flares up and down. And a lot more has been happening of late. I think over the past, several months, a lot more has been happening within the South African landscape. We have had groups of people, in some instances even political leaders, driving messaging and narratives around really the expulsion of foreign nationals and mainly other Africans from African countries from South Africa. Many of them have positioned their rhetoric around undocumented immigration, citing that there are a lot of undocumented foreign nationals in South Africa who, because they're undocumented, are therefore unaccounted for, and because they're unaccounted for, are therefore in a position where they get away with a lot of crimes in the country. And as a result of that, they have, built a mission almost to find these individuals and then to expel them from the country. And many of them are doing so outside of the provisions and the ambits of the law. And they do so arguing that these people are here illegally anyway, so why would we need a legal process to get them out? And in some instances, these, I want to call them interactions, but they're not interactions. Maybe these confrontations, yeah, that's a better word, have turned into violence, and some people have been hurt, and it's really been chaos. Also, many have argued that a lot of these foreign nationals also place a strain on public resources, particularly in the healthcare sector, in the education sector, and so on. And their argument is that the resources that the government of South Africa has to cater for the needs of South Africans, of its native citizenry, aren't enough for South Africans themselves. And so to have those resources therefore then further strained by people from outside the country is unacceptable. I understand all of this thinking, and I think it's important for me to say that off the cuff, that I understand the thinking, and I understand where some of these, frustrations are coming from. Anywhere you go in the continent and in the world, the governments of the different nations are poised to prioritize their citizenry, before anybody else. So I understand what people are saying and where their frustration comes from. I just don't think that some of the things that are being done or the actions that are being taken are the solution to solving the problems that are there. I don't think that taking to the streets, attacking people, asking them where they're from, asking them what they're doing in this country, like I've seen some of these so-called leaders of some of these movements have been doing, is the right way to approach the problem. I think the problem is a lot more complex than what some of the actions that we're trying to take can solve. And I think the approaches that some of these individuals and these groups of people are taking are only going to exacerbate a problem that we have, or the problems that we have as a people. I think we need to think a lot more strategically and a lot deeper about what needs to be done to solve the problems that we have. First of all, I don't think that the fight is being waged against the people who it's supposed to be waged. I don't think that we are supposed to be attacking people in the streets because we believe they are here illegally. The problem that we have in that regard, as it relates to illegal immigration, is a system problem. And because it's a system problem, it's therefore a governance problem. Because it's a governance problem, it's therefore a leadership problem. And so the people who are responsible to be leading the processes of immigration and upholding the immigration laws of the country are the people we should be waging a fight against. Because if the illegal immigration problem has become so dire, it means that the system is broken. It means that some people are not doing their jobs, right? And most South Africans are aware about the corruption that has taken place, that has been taking place for years on end, when it comes to Home Affairs and its officials, and how that then feeds into illegal immigration becoming such a problem in this country. But we have to remember that this is a long-standing problem. It's not something that started yesterday. And because it's a long-standing problem, we can't purport to execute quick answers or quick solutions to solve such a complex problem. I think it's fallacious, and I think it's self-deceiving. What is required is a more targeted, a more thorough process than that. We should be taking the fight to our officials. We should be leveraging the systems that our Constitution gives us to fight the fight of illegal immigration and closing the gaps that exist in that space. That's what I think. Of course, it'll take time. It'll take commitment. It'll take focus. It will take a great deal of political will to eventually fix the problem. And I know some people have argued that there is no time. It's the problems that we have are so urgent that something has to be done instantly. But that's not realistic. That's not how life works. That's not how, that's not how societal issues and problems and challenges are resolved. There is no overnight solution to any social problem that exists in the world, right? We can march as much as we like, chase people with sticks as much as we like. That's not going to solve the problem by tomorrow morning, by next week, or by the end of June. As our good friends from March and March have declared. They've declared the end of June as the deadline for foreign nationals to leave the country. As a matter of fact, I have been quite astounded to notice that the conversation went from trying to get illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants out of the country to just immigrants, to just foreign nationals. I found that to be quite astounding. And the allegation is that no, a lot of these guys who are here from outside of the country, even if they do have documentation, that documentation was obtained illegally. I don't know if any of them have ever conducted a formal investigation to verify those assertions, because I do believe that not everybody who is a foreign national who is in this country obtained their documentation illegally. And if they did, then you would have to, you would have to investigate and present empirical evidence that that is what took place. Otherwise, it's speculation, and otherwise, it's a mask for something else, as opposed to what it is that the rhetoric itself says, right? But also, and that I should also mention, it's a very difficult thing to prove if anybody obtained, because of the way our processes are structured. It's not very easy and cut and dried to prove if anybody obtained their documentation illegally. In some cases, it may be provable, but not in every case, certainly. And so for that reason, we need to be careful. We need to be careful lest we try to solve a criminal problem by becoming criminals ourselves. I think also important to mention is that one of the best ways I think we can solve the issue of illegal immigration in this country, apart from fixing the broken system itself, right, and holding our officials who are responsible for managing the immigration policies and processes of this country, and to enforce the law in that regard, accountable. We need to also consider the fact that a lot of these so-called illegal immigrants who are in South Africa have been here for many years. They have integrated into our society. Many of them have married South Africans. They have born children in this country. And those realities make the issue even more complex, right? And because of that, my view is that part of the solution that needs to happen, or part of the solution that needs to be leveraged, is for those who are in this country who are not properly documented, to be classified into different categories. If you are here and you're not documented, how long have you been here? That's number one. What life are you living here? Number two. How do you earn living? What are the realities surrounding your family dynamics? And then based on those factors and what your contribution to the South African society and the economy is, you should be able to be naturalized. You should be able to be a South African by naturalization. It's what every progressive country in the world does. This is not new, and it wouldn't be new to South Africa or unique to us at all. That, I think, is part of the conversations we need to be having to solve the problem of illegal documentation. And I've heard very few people actually speak about that, even within the political landscape. I think one of the few people I've heard address it in that way is Julius Malema, and I don't think he's wrong at all. And people have vilified him and said all manner of things against him, citing that he is not for South Africans, he's in favor of foreign nationals, blah, 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 blah. But he's not wrong. He's not wrong at all. In fact, my belief is that the man is actually being crucified for being way ahead of his time, because it's unavoidable. That is, we've got to face that these are the realities. Our continent is becoming more and more integrated as the world becomes more and more globalized. So for South Africans to think that we can exist as an exclusive microcosm, again, is fallacious and self-deceiving. I think it's time for us to broaden our perspective and begin to look at the problems that we have, not just as national problems, but as continental problems. We need to be looking at the problems that we have as African problems and not as South African problems. This is the only way, and this is where this gets really close to my heart. This is the only way that this continent will ever raise its head to find its place of pride in the polity of nations and global discourse. We've got to look at our problems as African problems. And we've got to hold our leaders all over the continent to account as to what it is that they are doing or failing to do as leaders that exacerbates some of these problems. Why are there so many people from other African countries who are flooding South Africa year on year in the way that it happens? Why do so many Africans feel that there is more opportunity for them in South Africa, that they have an opportunity to live a better life in South Africa than in their own homeland? Right? These are the conversations we're supposed to be having. This is what is going to empower Africa as a continent to unearth the potential that she has with everything that we've been blessed with as a continent. How is it that we are still subject to the rest of the world? The myopic mind doesn't want to have that conversation because it's easier to just say, no, abahambe. It's easier. It's easier to just chase people in the streets with sticks and tell them to leave South Africa. But the world itself, in the way that it's developing, doesn't allow for that. In the long term, it doesn't allow for that. And I feel in some ways Africans are being used to fight against each other and to rage against each other, when in fact we would be more powerful if we united. I don't deny that there are people who come in, who come into South Africa illegally and then commit crimes. But I don't think, as I said in my previous video, that is an ethnic problem. I don't think that is a nationality problem. I think that is a criminal problem and should be dealt with as such. But it's easy to be bigotous. It's so easy to be bigotous. Because we don't want to think deeper, we don't want to think broader. So let the foreign nationals who've been here for a long time, who are earning an honest living, be naturalized, if they so wish. If they want to be part of this country, let them be naturalized. That will solve a significant portion of the problem, because when they become naturalized, then the government can track them. Then they would have to pay taxes in this country. Then we know who they are, we know where they are, and they can be properly accounted for. I think Africans need to really wake up. We absolutely need to wake up. Also, I want to just say to South Africans, and please hear me and hear it from whence it comes, from a place of honesty and love. South Africans need to realize that South Africa is not heaven. I'm going to say it again for the people at the back. South Africa is not heaven. As awesome as our country is, and I really believe, having traveled to many countries in the world, I really believe that South Africa is the best country in the world. I love this country so much, and I am so proud to be South African. And I would defend South Africa on any platform, any day, because I really believe in the beauty of this country and the strength of this country and her people. But we have to realize that this is not heaven. What do I mean when I say this is not heaven? Let me put it to you this way. We have an unemployment rate sitting at almost 33%, youth unemployment at about 46% or so. We have graduates who have come out of our institutions, who are sitting at home, unable to find work because of the limitation of opportunities in the job market of South Africa. What would happen if South Africans stopped looking only to the local market to find opportunities where jobs and career development is concerned? What would happen? The state of our economy and the job market has already told us that we are not creating enough opportunities, or opportunities rapidly enough to meet the growing need within our economy. And yes, of course, we've got to continue to hold government to account and apply pressure on the government and on the private sector, and, as it relates to the collaboration between these two sectors, for those jobs to be created and for those gaps to be filled. But what would happen if we weren't only looking on the South African landscape or to the South African landscape? What would happen if graduates in this country changed their psychology to stop being so local in their thinking and begin to look for opportunities in other African countries and look for, what type of work is available and what they can do in other African countries with the skills that they have? Both professionally and entrepreneurially, what would happen? The problem is, we think South Africa is heaven. And so we think every opportunity in the world exists in the South Africa market and in the South Africa landscape. But South Africa, dear friends, is not heaven. As awesome as our beautiful country is, it's not heaven. I'm running a small business. Most of the work that I am currently doing is with clients and companies outside of South Africa. I work in multiple African countries outside of South Africa. Most of my business comes from countries outside of South Africa. If I had not learned about the wealth of opportunity that the rest of the continent has to offer, when you are skilled and you've got something of value to offer in those markets, I would also be looking only within the South African landscape for opportunities. But I learned this years ago already that Africa is ripe, so ripe for the taking. And Africa is really open. Yes, there are a number of challenges that we still have. We still need to do more in terms of facilitating intra-African trade and making it easier for Africans to trade across borders. But there's already so much progress that has been made in that regard. And if you are stubborn and rugged like some of us and have enough grit, you break down those barriers, you knock on those doors, and you do business in the rest of the continent. And the job market also has opportunities to offer across many African states that you can take advantage of if you could just stop being so local in your thinking. And this is part of our problem as Africans. This is part of our problem, particularly as South Africans. We think this country is heaven. It is not heaven. We love South Africa. We're proud to be South Africans, but we know that there is a world of opportunity outside of South Africa. And if more South Africans could wake up to this reality, this would be a great step towards Africa actually enjoying a greater sense of renaissance. So, I think this is food for thought. I know this is not going to resonate with everybody, because regrettably, there are so many of my countrymen and women who are so seeped in the poison of bigotry and the poison of AFROPHOBIA that it's almost impossible for them to hear it. But we will continue to preach the message nonetheless. The message of Pan-Africanism, the message of African unity. This is the level at which we are supposed to be talking. It's too base to be talking about, hey abahambe, hey kwere, hey this. We're behind time. Africa, we're behind time. We're so behind time. And we have yet to learn that we are being pitched against each other by certain influences and certain powers who would hate to see the unification of this great continent and the power that would arise from it. Look beyond the borders of your homeland. There's such a wealth of opportunity across this continent. That if we started finding ways of how we could work together across, the national divide of these colonial borders that have been imposed upon us, the things we would be able to achieve. And I might do another video to, continue the conversation. I think for as long as we have some of the things that have been happening in our local context happening, I think those of us who are trying to drive a positive message around, this continent and the future of this continent must keep speaking. And so certainly I will continue to add my voice and I will keep speaking. But before I close this particular video, I want to also mention that what we see happening in South Africa now, with many South Africans saying Abahambe, the March and March gang saying we don't want Amakwera here and all of that jazz. It's not new. It's not unique to South Africa. We've seen this happen in other African countries as well. Through the years, actually. But I want to draw inference or reference to specifically what happened between Nigeria and Ghana in the 80s. There was a time in the mid-80s or so, if I'm not mistaken about the timelines, where Nigeria's economy was booming and the Ghanaian economy wasn't doing so well. And as a result, there was a large migration of Ghanaians moving into Nigeria to find opportunities. And as it happens with migration and seasons of great migration, that came with a lot of challenges that weighed down on the Nigerian economy, that in some ways contributed also to the increase of crime or the crime statistics in the Nigerian society. And as a result of that, many Nigerians rose up to say there are too many Ghanaians in Nigeria, and they've got to go. And that's where the whole Ghana Must Go campaign flared up, right? And Ghanaians were sent back to Ghana and deported and kicked out in a similar fashion that South Africans are now trying to do with other foreign nationals, in droves and droves and droves. So it's not a new problem. But that which happened in the 80s with Ghana Must Go didn't solve the problems that Nigerians had. It didn't make things better for Nigerians. As a matter of fact, since those days, things got progressively worse for Nigerians, which tells you that the problem was not Ghanaians. The problem was the systems that existed in Nigeria as a country. So the problems that we have, and this is the point I'm trying to make, are not caused by foreign nationals, right? What we are supposed to be doing is to be reaching across the borders, reaching across the divides of these borders, to collaborate as Africans and to see how we can strengthen this continent through collaborative effort. That's what's supposed to be happening. And it's interesting to note, when you look now, yes, of course, Nigeria is a far larger economy than Ghana is. But when you look at how the two economies are doing from a performance point of view, Ghana is doing a lot better than Nigeria is doing, these days. Things have changed from what they were several years ago. It tells you no country in this continent is heaven. As well as South Africa is doing in comparison to many other African countries, does not mean that South Africa is therefore heaven and, that things will remain so for eternity. I think we have an opportunity as Africans to really begin to enjoy a strong renaissance and begin to do things that will uplift this continent from Cape to Cairo. But we will not be able to do that for as long as we're fighting the small battles and we're allowing ourselves to be pitched against each other by external forces that have an interest in the division of Africa, in the division of Africans. You can call me a non-patriot, I don't care. I'm a child of the continent. I am a Pan-Africanist, and that will never change. When I land in any African country, it is my home. When I land anywhere on this continent, that locality is part of my home because I am an African child. And I expect that I will be received in those places, and I expect that I will be able to leverage any opportunities I want to leverage in those localities within reason and within the ambits of the law.